Hi class, it's Miss Chauncey, and tonight we're going to do a couple of things. First, right now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read what we had due in Mr. Coggins' class, which is the handouts that we handed out today. It's why the tortoise's shell is not smooth. We're going to read through this. Don't forget you have vocabulary, the 4 squares. You should have taken those all home tonight. Also, you have science, which I'm going to do right after we do this. And you also have a test in social studies on Thursday. So don't forget to read through your tests, or at least read through your study guides and the information you have. So right now, let's get your ELA stuff out that Mr. Coggins sent home. Why the tortoise's shell is not smooth. And let's get started. Okay. Low voices, broken now and again by singing, reach Okinawa. From his wife's hut says each woman and her children took folk stories. Equifi and her daughter Esma sat on a mat on the floor. It was Equifi's turn to tell a story. Once upon a time, she began, all the birds were invited to feast in the sky. They were very happy and began to prepare themselves for the great day. They painted their bodies red with cam wood and drew beautiful patterns on them with dye. Tortoise saw all these preparations and soon discovered what it all meant. Nothing that happened in the world of the animals ever escaped his notice. He was full of cunning. Vocabulary word, everybody. As soon as he heard of the great feast in the sky, his throat began to itch, and at the very moment. There was a famine, another vocabulary word, in those days, and Tortoise had not eaten a good meal for 2 moons. His body rattled like a piece of dry stick in his empty shell, so he began to plan how he would go to the sky. But he had no wings, said Nisma. Be patient, replied her mother. That is the story. Tortoise had no wings, but he went to the birds and asked to be allowed to go with them. We know you all too well, said the birds when they had heard him. You are full of cunning, and you are ungrateful. If we allow you to come with us, you will soon begin your mischief. You do not know me, said Tortoise. I am a changed man. I have learned that a man who makes trouble for others is also making it for himself. Okay, everybody, turn the page, page 918. The tortoise had a sweet tongue, and within a short time all the birds agreed that he was a changed man, and they each gave him a feather with which he could make 2 wings. At last the great day came, and Tortoise was the first to arrive at the meeting place. When all the birds had gathered together, they set off in a body. Tortoise was very happy as he flew among the birds, and he was soon chosen as the man to speak for the party because he was a great orator. There's another one of your vocabulary words. There is one important thing which we must not forget, he said as they flew on their way. When people are invited to a great feast like this, they take new names for the occasion. Our hosts in the sky will expect us to honor this age-old custom. Custom, another one of your vocabulary words. None of the birds had taken on this custom, but they knew Tortoise, in spite of his failings in other directions, was a widely traveled man who knew the customs of different people. And so they each took a new name. When they had all taken, Tortoise also took one. He was to be called All of You. At last the party arrived in the sky, and their hosts were very happy to see them. Tortoise stood up in his many-colored plumage and thanked them for their invitation. His speech was so eloquent, a vocabulary word, that all the birds were glad they had brought him, and nodded their heads in approval of all he said. Their host took him in as the king of the birds, especially as he looked somewhat different from the others. After kola nuts had been presented and eaten, the people of the sky set before their guests the most delectable dishes Tortoise had ever seen or dreamed of. The soup was brought out hot from the fire in the very pot in which it had begun to cook. It was full of meat and fish. Tortoise began to sniff aloud. There was pounded yam and also yam pottage, cooked with palm oil and fresh fish. There were also pots of palm wine. When everything had been set before the guests, one of the people of the sky came forward and tasted a little from each pot. Then he invited the birds to eat. But Tortoise jumped to his feet and asked, "For whom have you prepared this feast?" "For all of you," replied the man. Tortoise turned to the birds and said, "Remember that my name is All of You. The custom here is to serve you the spokesman first and others later. They will serve you when I have eaten." He began to eat, and the birds grumbled angrily. The people of the sky thought it must be their custom to leave all the food for their king, and so Tortoise ate the best part of the food, and then drank 2 pots of palm wine, so that he was full of food and drink, and his body grew fat enough to fill out his shell. The birds gathered around to eat what was left and to peck at the bones he had thrown out on the floor. Some of them were too angry to eat. They chose to fly home on an empty stomach. But before they left, each took back the feather he had lent to Tortoise. And there he stood in his hard shell, full of food and wine, but without any wings to fly home. He asked the birds to take a message to his wife, but they all refused. In the end, Parrot, who had left more angry than the others, suddenly changed his mind and agreed to take the message. "Tell my wife," said Tortoise, "to bring all of the soft things in my house and cover the compound with them so that I can jump from the sky without very great danger." Parrot promised to deliver the message and then flew away. But when he reached Tortoise's house, he told his wife to bring out all the hard things in the house. Everybody, last page. And so he brought out his husband's hoes, machetes, spears, gun, and even his cannon. Tortoise looked down from the sky and saw his wife bringing things out, but it was too far to see what they were. When all seemed ready to let himself go, he fell and fell and fell, until he began to fear that he would never stop falling. And then, like the sound of his cannon, he crashed into the compound. "Did he die?" said Anisma. "No," replied Equife. "His shell broke into pieces, but there was a great medicine man in the neighborhood. Tortoise's wife sent for him, and he gathered all the bits of the shell and stuck them together. And that is why Tortoise's shell is not smooth." Okay, everybody, I hope you enjoyed the story. It was actually pretty good. Don't forget, we're going to be talking about this tomorrow. Don't forget your vocabulary words, antonyms, synonyms, the definition, parts of speech, and then try to make up a sentence using that vocabulary word in the sentence. For those of you who want to finish and move on to science, I'm going to try to hype and get my science done also so I can upload it for you. And don't forget, social studies test. So let's do a little bit of studying for Thursday. All right, everybody, have a great night and make sure you get a good sleep. See you in the morning.